What if the greatest battle you will ever fight is the one inside your own mind? This question echoed like thunder, because at some point in life a person may wake up and realize something unsettling. They may see that almost everything they believed about who they are and where they stand in the world was not shaped by their own hands. It was shaped by a system built in plain sight, refined over generations, whispered into their thoughts, pressed into their choices, and stamped onto their identity. It was never a hidden conspiracy. It was simply the world doing what it does best, teaching people what to think before they ever learn how to think. He is born into this world already in motion, long before he forms his first memory. Language, norms, and expectations surround him. He is told what is good and what is bad, what is acceptable and what is shameful. His young mind, open and tender, absorbs everything without question. At that age, he does not know how to question. He does not know he is allowed to. When he enters school, the system is already operating with full force. He learns to sit still, obey rules, follow instructions, and seek approval from authority. He discovers that praise comes from compliance, not curiosity. He realizes that stepping outside the line brings correction, while staying inside the line brings reward. Grades, behavior charts, gold stars, and warnings shape him. These early lessons whisper that validation does not come from within, but from those who watch over him. Psychologist B.F. Skinner once showed that behavior could be shaped through reinforcement, and society noticed. Those principles escaped the lab and spread into classrooms, workplaces, advertisements, and eventually social media. The likes he chases, the trends he follows, the outrage he echoes all become part of a cycle of external validation. But he rarely stops to wonder who decides what is worthy of approval. In the first place, this is where the lie takes shape. The lie says that his value depends on how well he fits into the system. It tells him that success is measured by productivity instead of fulfillment, and identity is measured by appearance, profession, or possessions. Billboards, school lessons, and cultural stories all repeat the same message: conform and you will be rewarded. But what happens when someone does not fit? What happens when a quiet voice inside whispers a truth that contradicts the narrative? Most people silence that voice out of fear of rejection, judgment, or irrelevance. Philosopher Michel Foucault warned that society controls not through force, but through normalization. It convinces people that what is common is what is correct. Anything outside the accepted standard becomes deviant, dangerous, or broken. Many individuals reach a point where they feel they are living someone else's life. They chase goals they never chose. They bury passions under expectations. That inner discomfort is the true self trying to rise. But society quickly teaches them that dissatisfaction is a personal failure. If they are unhappy, it must be because they did not try hard enough, hustle enough, or think positively enough. The system avoids blame by pushing people into cycles of self-criticism. This raises a question: who benefits from this arrangement? When a person is insecure, corporations profit. When they are obedient, institutions maintain power. When they believe they are free while acting only within invisible boundaries, they become ideal consumers and controllable citizens. Sociologist Eric Fromm warned that modern freedom is often an illusion. People trade true liberty for order, belonging, and comfort. They submit not because they must, but because they learn to. And yet, something inside them still whispers, "This is not who I am." What happens when that whisper stops being quiet and begins to rise? The answer lies ahead. What if the chains you fear the most are the ones you cannot see? That question strikes deeply, because to understand how society quietly controls a person, he must first look backward. He must peel away the layers of history and see how the forces shaping him did not appear overnight. They grew slowly, subtly, and intelligently. He was not born into freedom. He was born into a blueprint, a script written long before he arrived, a stage already prepared, and the actors around him were already playing their roles. Centuries ago, control was direct and unmistakable. Kings ruled by divine right. Religions declared power over souls. Empires spread influence through swords, threats, and decrees. Back then, fear was the main tool. If someone disobeyed, the punishment was swift. The lines were clear. But as civilizations progressed, control changed its shape. It became quieter, softer, and far more effective. It moved from the battlefield into the mind. Philosopher Plato warned about this through his allegory of the cave. He described people living their whole lives watching shadows on a wall, believing those shadows were reality. When one prisoner escaped and saw the truth, he returned to tell the others, only to be mocked, feared, or rejected. Society, in this story, is the cave. The great lie is the belief that the cave is all there is. Today's control is more sophisticated than anything ancient rulers could imagine. It no longer relies on chains or threats. It uses stories. Stories shape how people see the world. Stories teach values, fears, dreams, and identity. From childhood tales to national history, from movies to political speeches, stories mold perception. The more a story is repeated, the more it feels like truth. Consider the idea of meritocracy. It sounds empowering. Work hard and you will succeed. But beneath the surface lies a harsh message. If someone does not succeed, it must be their fault. This story hides inequality, masks structural problems, and pressures people to blame themselves for things they cannot control. It is not told to uplift them but to pacify them. Political scientist Noam Chomsky explained that modern media does not control people by telling lies, but by shaping the boundaries of what they are allowed to question. The power lies not in controlling information, but in controlling interpretation. Then came the screen, first television, then the internet, then social media. Never before had billions of minds been exposed to the same images and ideas at the same time. Mass media did not simply reflect culture, it created it. A person sees celebrities smiling in luxury and thinks that is what success looks like. He scrolls through perfect lives online and wonders why his own life is not the same. It feels like envy, but it is actually programming. Even individuality became a product. Society encourages him to be unique, but only in acceptable ways. He can express himself, but only within approved boundaries. He can be authentic, but never disruptive. Psychologist Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, the shared patterns and symbols that connect humanity. Society learned to exploit these symbols. Deep desires for purpose, connection, and transformation were turned into branding, advertising, and trends. Spirituality became marketing. Activism became a performance. Rebellion became a style to sell. And beneath it all lies the illusion of choice. When he votes, is he choosing a future or selecting between two versions of the same system? When he scrolls, is he discovering interests or being guided by algorithms that know his desires before he does? Language itself becomes a tool of control. George Orwell warned in his novel 1984 that when language is restricted, thought is restricted. Today, society uses softer replacements to hide hard realities. Civilian death becomes collateral damage. Layoffs become downsizing. Influencers replace advertisers. Words are softened to protect power and limit resistance. When someone finally pushes back, they are labeled extreme, irrational, or dangerous. But the truth remains. The mind, once awakened, cannot easily return to sleep. And that is why the most powerful form of control is the one people enforce on themselves. Because now comes the darkest layer, and the most dangerous revelation is about to surface. If the mind is a cage, then what happens when the prisoner finally discovers the key was always in his hand? This question turns the world upside down, because the most dangerous prison is not built from stone or steel. It is built inside the mind. It is shaped by years of conditioning, quiet expectations, and unspoken rules. It is the subtle force that guides decisions, shapes relationships, and even defines a person's sense of worth. He believes he is thinking for himself, but in reality, society has been thinking for him for far longer than he realizes. From the moment he is born, the conditioning begins. Society does not only shape his behavior, it shapes how he sees himself. It teaches him what is acceptable to believe, who he is allowed to become, and which dreams are realistic enough to pursue. It tells him which emotions are appropriate and which are not. This invisible hand guides his desires, his fears, and his choices long before he can understand what choice even means. Psychologists call this self-censorship. It is the process in which people internalize society's rules so deeply that they begin to police themselves. They avoid certain thoughts, bury certain desires, and silence certain possibilities without ever questioning why. No one stands over them with a threat. The control comes from within. It is learned, practiced, and repeated until it feels natural. He grows up believing that to be normal is to be safe. Normality becomes a shield that protects him from judgment, rejection, and shame. But normality is not truth. It is a construct. It is created by those in power to keep people predictable, manageable, and easy to control. The world convinces him that conformity is comfort. Yet every layer of conformity buries a piece of his true self. Inside him lives a quiet longing to break free. He feels moments of truth rising in him, moments when he remembers passions he once had, dreams he once held, and questions he once asked. But just like the prisoners in Plato's cave, he fears the light. The shadows on the wall are familiar. The truth feels frightening. This is how self-censorship works. It is not loud. It is not violent. It is quiet. It is gentle. It is polite. It whispers that his dreams are too risky, that his desires are unrealistic, that his true self is inconvenient. It convinces him to shrink so he can fit into the world shaped for him. Think about how many dreams he has dismissed simply because they felt too strange or too bold. Think about how many times he told himself that something just isn't how things are done. Each time he does that, another piece of him fades, not because society told him directly, but because society taught him to tell himself. Breaking free begins with one step: reclaiming the mind. Reclaiming the mind means questioning every belief he has inherited. It means examining the ideas he carries and asking, is this truly mine, or was it planted in me by someone else? It is the deep work of separating his voice from the voices of the world around him. The human mind is flexible. It can change, evolve, and grow. But this transformation does not happen automatically. It requires courage. It requires honesty. It requires facing the truth that many of the limits he believes in were never real to begin with. For example, he may have spent his entire life believing that success equals wealth. He may chase money, status, and recognition, thinking they will finally make him whole. But when he reaches those things, he may still feel empty. Why? Because he never asked what success meant to him. His desires were shaped by society, not his own inner truth. Reclaiming the mind means asking one powerful question: what do I really want? Not what he was taught to want, not what others expect him to want. What he wants. Society wants him to believe that happiness must be earned through obedience and conformity. But what if happiness is not a reward? What if it is a birthright? Existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that existence precedes essence. He believed people are not defined by roles or labels placed on them. They are defined by the choices they make. True freedom begins when a person chooses who they want to be, instead of accepting who society tells them to be. To break free, 3 steps must happen: awareness, reclamation, action. Awareness reveals the lie. Reclamation takes back the mind. Action turns truth into life. It is not about rejecting society, but about choosing authenticity over expectation. He now stands at the edge of a new path. The world told him he is limited, small, and defined by others. But he is not. He is limitless. And the moment he realizes that, everything changes. Because now the real question rises: if he finally sees the cage, will he dare to step outside?